The animal kingdom is full of mystery and intrigue. What's this? Who's that? And why do gibbons have such big arms? There's still so much we don't know. Who am I? I'm Jude Wedgwood. People often refer to me as the young David Attenborough or the new Steve Backshall. And I have big dreams. Dreams far grander than you could even imagine. That's right, I plan on opening my very own zoo. And with a bit of help from the 2004 video game Zoo Tycoon 2, I just might be able to make that dream a reality. After opening up the game, the goal was simple. I would be making the most incredible zoo in the history of the world. Zoo Tycoon runs on a star rating system. I was in search of the coveted 5 stars. My thought process at the time was bigger equals better. Therefore, I would need to start my zoo somewhere with a lot of space to fill. I could have chosen somewhere in North America. I could have chosen to run a European zoo. But no, there was only one place with enough space for my zoo, and that was the middle of the Sahara Desert. I know what you're thinking, surely having a zoo in the middle of a desert is going to hinder our chances of success. But I mean, people go to the beach all the time, I don't really see the difference, it's all sand, isn't it? And when I arrived at the destination, I felt even more confident. The zoo grounds already included a natural oasis, a mountain range, and this weirdly shaped path. Plus the skies were filled with vultures, which means if any of my visitors can't hack the desert heat, I don't have to worry about disposing the bodies. There was only one more preparation to make. The zoo needed a name. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the vast and endless wastes. It's a controversial name, I know, but hopefully that'll work in our favour and get us some more publicity. The time had now come to make our first exhibit, and with that in mind, I began to extend the paving. This did highlight just how mountainous the area I'd chosen was, but if anything, at least the guests will get a bit of exercise. I then had to choose which animal to buy for our first exhibit, but there was so much to choose from, so in the end I decided to go in alphabetical order, and began work on the Aardvark enclosure. Aardvarks eat ants, so I made sure to place down several termite mounds, and according to this game they also enjoy big pools of tar, which is weird but I won't question it. After the enclosure was complete, I acquired 2 aardvarks, a female named Crumpulus and a male named Benjamin Benjamin the Defiled. To take care of these 2 troublemakers, I employed some zookeepers, and with that we were almost ready for the public. All that was left to do was provide some basic services. Seeing as we're in the desert, I felt it was important to make sure everyone would stay hydrated, so I filled an entire side with soda stands. This meant I would also need a few toilet blocks. And don't worry, I did also provide a place to get food too. However, if you feel like eating anything other than hot dogs at my zoo, then I'm afraid you're out of luck. I then bought a bouncy castle for the kids and an active volcano for the clout. Don't worry, it's completely safe, there's a rope around it, it's not going to explode on anyone. Now that my zoo was prepared and ready to go, the customers started rolling in to see the world famous Aardvark exhibit, and why wouldn't they? These guys are adorable. But Aardvarks aren't just pretty faces, they're also incredibly business minded, and after talking to Benjamin the Defiled for a short while, we came up with a genius idea. Donation boxes. The Aardvarks would do their thing and the donations would come rolling in. I was going to be a very, very rich man. At this point we had 3 whole guests in our zoo. Scott Oviat thought it was cool how Benjamin the Defiled was grooming himself, and Manoj Simon couldn't wait to see some animals. It was also at this point that I was surprised to find that Aardvarks are actually very strong swimmers. See, this game is educational too. Well, most Aardvarks are strong swimmers, Crumpulus seems to be the exception. Seeing as the first exhibit was so successful, it was now time to make a second, and after some deep thought, I opted to make a spectacled bear enclosure. In honour of their appearance, I named them Four Eyes and Gandhi. I was given a bit of a shock when it appeared they'd both died as soon as I placed them down, but thankfully they were okay, and they set about getting comfortable and... Oh, what is that one doing? Get down from there at once! Let's see what our guests think of our new animals. Manoj Simon doesn't seem to be too happy. I'm exhausted, I need a place to rest. I don't like this zoo. I'm parched. I'm giving the zoo a donation. I'd made a good start, but I wasn't going to stop there, and after hiring 2 new members of staff, I decided to get in some animals that would really impress my visitors. A nice couple of giraffes. Unfortunately, when building the giraffe enclosure, I was beginning to encroach on the mountainous area of the park, so once again it's going to be a little inconvenient for anyone trying to walk along this path. Also, while inspecting the path, I was alerted that one of our new giraffes was currently drowning in deep water. I find it difficult to believe that this was the case, however, as a couple of seconds later, the guy was swimming about perfectly fine. Ah yes, perfectly fine. It must be said, everything was progressing incredibly well. The animals were happy, the zoo was becoming more popular by the second, and we'd now gained our first half a star. Even better news, one of our Aardvarks, Crumpulus, was pregnant. The wind was in my sails, and I set about creating yet another exhibit, this time a water exhibit with the intention of housing some whale sharks. Aurora and Cthulhu. I won't lie to you, I think there's something wrong with these whale sharks. I'm sure it's fine. Considering everything was going so well, it was at this point I thought I would check out my finances. Oh good, we've made over £2,000 in donations, but oh god, we're £149,000 in debt. It turns out this whole time we'd been letting our guests in for free. No wonder the zoo was so popular. I had to do something about this fast. I had to make the zoo bigger, and I had to get more animals. Now what animal could I get lots of? An animal that lives in groups maybe? I've got it! Flamingos! I wasn't holding back as I introduced 10 new flamingos to the zoo. This ought to pull in the punters, I thought, not to mention the fact we were about to have a third giraffe as Cornelius was pregnant. And speaking of pulling in the punters, I thought I'd up the entertainment value of my zoo by getting a few new mascots to perform for people as they walk round. This includes Bruno Mars, the dinosaur mascot, and then a lion mascot who I called the Chuckle Brothers. Theo! Bruno Mars was immediately up on stage performing a puppet show, whereas the Chuckle Brothers just started hanging out behind the toilets. As well as sorting out entertainment, I just upgraded the zoo's food and drink situation by adding every type of food cart available. However, I was interrupted midway through this process to some great news. Crumpulus had given birth to her 2 new children, Cornwallis and the Boss Baby, who unfortunately was born half submerged in the ground. This good news was followed by the birth of a new spectacled bear and the laying of 2 flamingo eggs. You guys gonna eat these or? We were once again on a roll, and after adding a tortoise enclosure, we'd hit an all-time high of 1.5 stars. Truly, looking at this zoo from the outside makes me very proud. Hold on, what's all this? As it turns out, while I'd been concerning myself with new babies and tortoises, the zoo had been progressively turning it into a rubbish dump. This required action, and a small army of maintenance workers were hired, as well as a small army of bins. As a result, things were set back on track, although I think I did hire a few too many people, because most of them spent the rest of the time just sitting down on park benches. Nonetheless, our zoo had now reached the heights of 2 stars, and I was now very much focused on my next move. When you think of zoos you've been to, what's the one thing that every single zoo has? Correct. Meerkats. Every zoo has meerkats, and a lot of meerkats at that. I would do the same. My meerkat exhibit would be the greatest meerkat exhibit of all time. I went completely mad. It was like my mind shut down and my body just took over as I placed meerkat after meerkat. It'll be fine, I thought. They live in big families anyway, right? Oh, how wrong I was. The meerkats were furious with me. The amount of notifications increased by about 10 times. I had no idea what to do. I was stuck with an army full of meerkats and nowhere to put them. This is when I noticed the option to release an animal to the wild. The plan was simple. I would just release all of them into the Sahara Desert. Out of sight, out of mind. For some reason, each individual meerkat was airlifted out of the zoo with its own individual helicopter, but I can't complain as the problem was solved. And not only that, but the zoo was actually awarded for its efforts in conservation, boosting us up to 3 stars. With the introduction of a new baby whale shark and a giraffe, that 5-star rating was within touching distance. All I needed now was one more big win, and my dream would come true. But I'd exhausted all of my good ideas. I'd tried almost everything I could think of. There was only one other card I had yet to play. Dinosaurs. You heard me right. Seeing as I actually have the Zoo Tycoon DLC, there are dinosaurs in the game. If you think about it, dinosaurs are basically just animals but better. And what's the most notorious and iconic dinosaur? The Tyrannosaurus Rex. If a zoo in real life had T-Rexes, people would be going crazy with excitement. So with a new burst of creative inspiration, I put everything into making the perfect T-Rex enclosure, and welcomed my 2 new friends to the park. Just to make sure, because I know T-Rexes can be a bit scary, can't they? But just to make sure people were completely at ease, I gave them the very approachable names of Nice Animal and Friendly Dinosaur. And they lived up to their titles, honestly. They were some nice guys. T-Rexes get a bad rap just because they're carnivores and they kill things, but it's so undeserved. Anyway, just as predicted, the zoo's ratings began to climb again. The dinosaurs were incredibly popular and crowds of people flooded into the park. On top of this, yet another aardvark was born, and the baby spectacled bear was being as cute as ever. It was safe to say that guests love my zoo. But then, something terrible happened. Just like in Jurassic Park, the T-Rexes escaped from their enclosure and began wreaking havoc across the zoo. Carnage ensued as visitors ran around in a state of panic. The toilets were destroyed and several people were left really needing the bathroom. The drinks vendors had to close their shops and visitors began to die of dehydration. Worst of all, I was back down to 2.5 stars, and nobody likes seeing a failing business. As a result, tourists began to leave in their thousands. Everything was going wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. The dream was over. I stood there in the middle of the desert, £1,270,870 in debt, with a bunch of aardvarks, a couple of rampaging dinosaurs, and the Chuckle Brothers. There was no other option but to close the zoo. At least there's still some hot dogs going though, am I right, guys?